it allows you to move your body in kind of a fixed line format. And the way I came up with it was he was showing us this one little trick he does where he basically like, oh look, you can make a pendulum. You go 1, 2,
Nice.
1, 2, and I was like, well, he's thinking of these two as fixed points, but actually what he has is 2 line segments, and he's working with line segments now. And from there, I kind of figured out that I can take this and make a whole system out of it. And I was like, well, you don't just have to go to 45 degrees, you can go all the way up. And you can break things down kind of from there in such a way that you will never break from the fixed line path. And it allows you to move with perfect transitions through any combination and kind of have a scalable system. Just to give you a sense of kind of the difference of working with fixed line or without it, this standard box that I was showing you that people do, where they're kind of like this, everything's happening at once. You know, you have a million things. If you want, you can kind of collapse what they're doing down to this. But with fixed line, I would break it down further. What I would do is I would start with a single line. I would flip out, come down, over, I flip here, down, over. And you kind of have a very ordered way of getting through the box. And once you have that understanding, you can take it and you can run with it, and you can show a box up here just as easily. And you know, you flip down and you kind of have a way that you will be able to work up to anything, no matter how complicated, with these very simple parts. Once I started developing that, I was kind of like unstoppable with it. And after that, I went back to the West Coast. I went back in 2003 to How the West Was Won. And I kind of dropped the finger boxes at that point because, you know, a lot of people say, now they say, oh, you know, forget all this fancy finger stuff, just learn tutting. That's kind of what I've been doing. Mm-hmm. You know, I was at a point where I was just trying to get the basic system down. So I've been working on very basic angles. I came up with a bunch of cool applications of fixed point to break things down. Like you have this position, and I kind of broke it down all the way across. I would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Very basic, but for some reason, even now, people still don't understand to break down that way. And
it's kind of alien.
Yeah, they don't
like...
they don't understand the basic principles.
Yes.
But you can also, of course, you know, you can go up with it, and you can break it down up to here, and you have all those positions up there.
Nice.
And I went out there to How the West Was Won, and I showed that to Tetris. And what he showed me is kind of what made me get back into finger boxing, because at that point, we're only talking about 2003, but D-Strange was not around very much anymore. No one was really doing finger boxing. But Tetris had taken those positions I showed him, you know, this one, and he had basically learned them very well. And he had a breakdown he did where he did, instead of just doing index to pinky, he went index, and then he did the ring finger, or the ring fingers, and then he did, you know, this one and that one. I didn't think it looked that clean, but the important thing to me was that he was working on it. And for me, I was always more motivated if there was at least one other person, so it's kind of like an arms race. And he also had a cool thing he did where he went like this and went, you know, blew out like that. No. And so what I did is I took that and I made that a way of moving. So I would break it down like this. And a lot of things started coming together. But that was, I think, around the time that finger tutting was just in its real infancy. It's a very long answer to your question.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, it's cool. It's cool. Yeah.
You know, I guess where you came along was probably around, I'd say around 2002, maybe 2003. I saw you at House Dance Conference. We had seen each other many times before that, but enough time had passed, so it was kind of like we were catching up. And I showed you the D-Strange finger boxes. I showed you the Fu Manchu boxes over here. And you showed me then, you had the peace sign, which you went into the love sign. And you had also some ones where
these like all kinds of like.
Yeah, you had all kinds of characters, but you also had a few ones where they were in here. And around that time also, I started seeing Believe. I don't know if any of you guys know him, but his name was Brian. He was a smart guy. He went to Harvard. He dropped out of the scene. Usually people who have their shit together tend to get out of the scene. Those of us who, hang on to it, for us it's like, it's really important. Other people, something distracts them. But when I started seeing him, we played around with this tutting stuff a lot. And for me, where finger boxing kind of started to explode was after working on this, where I transitioned like that. I was breaking it down, and I would practice things like endlessly. So at some point, this is how I got to the index finger box that you found through your finger characters. I was like, oh, well, I could go like this. And so from there, I kind of already had a framework to put them into. So I already had positions that were here. I had the same position that's here, right? And I had, of course, on the other side. And people, they kind of might not think that's significant having it on one side versus both. But a lot of people learn things haphazardly, so they only have things on one quadrant. Like you watch people do liquid, and it'll all be like right here or right here, and like, well, there's another side of your body. There's space up here. So I started at that point breaking it down and figuring out how to flip out and across. And then I saw a box that Jigsaw did. There was a graphic of it, or JPEG, on Mr. Wiggles. And I kind of recreated it as this, which I would then flip open like this and back and over. What he had was a little bit different. What he had was a box. Actually, I think it was his brother. And it was shown from this perspective. It was kind of funny. It was like this, and then this, and then these fingers were like crossed over. So it was like, I don't know if you could see that tiny, but it's like a little box in there.
Yeah, it's actually this. I think it's this one, pretty much something.
Yeah,
like that.
but it's something like that. It's something with the fingers all like twisted up.
Like, yeah, I kind of do this.
Right.
All this is just back, to. All you're doing is the characters to the side, So
I didn't really like. I was interested by having a box within a box, but I didn't like the fact that you couldn't break into it on the fly. You kind of had to place your fingers. I like things where you can transition line by line cleanly. So I like the fact that you could break down here, and then add the little box in there, and then that you could break it apart. And eventually, I started walking with this. And you see the difference between the way you do it and I do it is each segment is kind of isolated, and that's my whole style really, is that everything goes one part at a time.
Yeah, but I mean, definitely between you and me, that whole walkout, this had to be between you and me. I don't think, personally, I don't think nobody in West Coast was doing that.
Well, I can tell you that.
And that's my opinion,
I went back out there.
I never see nobody.
I went back out there in 2006 to B-Boy Summit. I mean, I was back and forth there a lot, and every time I would show them new stuff. And that was when I was learning this sequence, the one where it was really very perfect, you know, like each part isolated. And I showed this to them, broken down, and for some of them, like Confusion, I repeated it for him like 10 times super slow. And I showed it to Jay Smooth. Actually, when he came up, Tetris was finger tutting, and he came up behind him and was doing stuff. And I showed it to everyone. I showed it to Icon, I showed it to Geometric, and it was only after that that I saw Jay Smooth start doing it. I think that part of the problem with history is that sometimes people come up with stuff on their own, but from my perspective, I showed it to them, they told me they hadn't seen it, and so I take credit for it. You might have had the same experience. They might say they were doing it already.
Well, you see, like I went to Mighty 4,
right,
and I had a big argument with some of the. I battled Bionic, and they started doing some funny stuff to me over there. They didn't even put me on the tape. I battled him, and they just put him throw down. You know. Anyway, they apologized after that. But you know, I was doing finger stuff. Everybody like this, and you know. I talked to some kid there too. I don't know what name was. He was a kid that was doing tuts. He was telling me, "Oh, wow, this is crazy stuff." I was even showing him boxes, like, cause there's even more like just straight up boxes where you continuously change, you know, positions. That was like some of my old stuff that I don't really do so much now. But so I was showing him this, and he was like, "Oh man, what the fuck is this?" You know, they were bugging out, but. They were like, "Oh, this guy is the East Coast dude."
Right.
Some guys from Playboys, they gave me some love because I was Electric Boogie and they were the Boogaloos.
Right.
So none of the Boogaloo guys that were, you know, they're all like doing that Boogaloo stuff. So they would look at me like, you know, who is this guy? You know, they never give no love. After all this time,